Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. And this weekend, while we're all stuck inside quarantining and chilling, Ozark Season 3 has dropped on Netflix. And if you're like me, within a 48-hour period, you've already burned through all 10 episodes. Netflix, y'all got any more of them Ozark episodes? And I will give you my thoughts about this amazing season right after the jump. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Now, let's talk about this wild ride that the Byrdes are on in Season 3. So, if you're an Ozarks fan, you kind of get the gist to catch you guys up. I'm not going to be too spoilery in this, but if you know what happened in Season 2, the Byrde family, Marty Byrde and Wendy Byrde, and the two kids, Charlotte and Jonah, have done everything humanly possible to get this casino going so that their money laundering scheme can continue, but as they do so, they keep getting tied into more shady and scrupulous people in Missouri, as well as getting more and more tied in with the drug cartel. And it's no longer just about money laundering, it's now about like self-preservation of their life while keeping afloat. So, and Season 2 ends with them getting, after all the dirty things that they do to everybody, as far as getting people killed and setting people up, they begin Season 3, and they end Season 2 getting the casino license. So naturally, Season 3 opens with the casino open. And I'm not going to be spoilery too much in this. Obviously, I'm going to give something away as I'm kind of giving my thoughts on the season. But when I get into super spoilers, or if I get into them, I will give you guys a notice so you guys are like, whoa, you ruined everything. So give you an idea of how this season opens. The Byrdes are a few months removed from the end of Season 2. The casino's open. It's been open for a while. They're doing a pretty decent business, but Marty has not begun the actual money laundering process yet, and that upsets some people. But he is being very cautious and being very safe and pragmatic, as he doesn't want to sign off any red flags to to bring unwanted attention to his family, who is a man who has actually wanted to be out of this for quite some time, but has a wife who is now hungry for power. And that's a pretty big detail of what happens through Season 3. Wendy Byrde's quest or thirst for our power kind of becomes her, I won't say undoing necessarily, but it becomes a big weight on her shoulder and causes much more strain to the entire family than it needs to be. So there are two, I would say, underlying or background things that sort of happen in this season that act as the catalyst for what this season goes through. The show opens this season with a super violent Mexican hit from a rival drug cartel. If you guys don't remember, the Byrdes are in cahoots with the Navarro drug cartel, and there is now a rival cartel that is trying to cause a lot of hell to him. So the season opens with them showing a hit, and then they kind of go away and start focusing on the Byrdes. And that is done to kind of show you that while the Byrdes are still the focus, and the Snells and the Langmores and all of those folks, this is going to be in the background the entire time. This is going to be something that happens and moves the season along and becomes a burden to the family. Season has a second opening on Season 2 that sort of acts as a catalyst for the rest of the Season 2 in the introduction of a character who, at the point in time, we don't know. He is a teacher, and he is teaching class and having a pretty good time with students, seems very even keel, and then something occurs and he kind of loses it and loses his job. And then we end there. We don't come back to him for a little bit for that episode. And that is done in a way to show you that there's a wild card that is going to be put into all of this, that he is Wendy Byrde's brother, who suffers from an illness, a mental illness, that was going to be a big catalyst for what the impetus of this season is. So what this season is basically is the Byrdes versus Helen. If you remember, Helen was a recurring character in Season 2. She comes in this and becomes more of beacon or a regular character in this season. She is a character who, unlike Marty, is not as pragmatic and not as safe. She wants the money laundering to begin immediately and becomes a part of this Ozark world to make sure that that gets done. So this entire season is literally a story about some people being safe, some people being impatient, and then the morality of doing things in and out of that world to make each other appeased. And so it looks like for the most of the season, it's going to be Helen and Wendy kind of teaming up on Marty, and the ladies of Ozarks once again showing their ladies of Ozarks once again showing that they are the backbone of this, and Marty's kind of just floundering along. But then stuff starts happening, and the wild card of Wendy's brother starts making things a little more difficult, a little bit more unstable. And unfortunately, we end up in some stuff that puts the Byrdes in a very precarious position. I'll say this about this season. This season was phenomenal to watch from start to finish. I think the first two seasons have a bit of a stop and start motion. So sometimes watching them, it's not as binge worthy as this season was. I think the first couple seasons, you could watch 3 or 4 episodes and then pause and then come back. This one, you don't really want to stop because there's a story thread that is happening that is just getting more and more fascinating as it goes along. I know Jason Bateman is a director as well, so sometimes he is not around an episode as much this season. This season feels very much more like it is Wendy Byrd's show, and Ruth Langmore a little bit in Helen, but and some new additional characters that I'll get into in a second. But this is very much a Wendy Byrde story, and I would go remiss if I did not say that in a 10-episode season, they've structured this season in a way that 1 through 8 tell a fantastic story. For most series, episode 9 would act as a series finale. It is beautifully shot. One of the best episodes of television that I've seen in a long time, called Fire Pink. It opens beautifully, it closes beautifully. It is the impetus of what those first 8 episodes are doing. And it's heartbreaking. And then you get to episode 10, which acts more of a coda to kind of bring everything that happened in episode 9 and the stuff before it together. And I think it's a really well done way of executing this season. It is, those last 2 episodes are like a bang bang gut punch of just, it's hard. And if you care about these characters and you care about this show, you're going to be invested immediately. And like, I can't wait for whenever season 4 actually happens. So what I'm going to do now is talk a little bit about, before I go into specifics and get into some spoilers, I'm going to talk about the new characters that are added this year. We have 3 or 4 major new characters that have been added. Helen is more of an add-on. She was there before, so you kind of know who she is. But the main new person would be Ben Davis, who is played by Tom Pelphrey, who most people would know from soap opera history, but a lot of people would know from Marvel's Iron Fist show. He played the brother. Unfortunately, he probably was one of the better parts of that show, but that show as a whole had a problem. So it was weird because it stuck with me for a great deal of the season. I was like, why do I know him from? Where do I know him from? And then because he is so phenomenal in this show, I didn't attach him at all to Iron Fist because that show was hot trash. But to say that he is great. There is a use of mental illness, of bipolar, that he portrays phenomenally. His highs are great, his lows are phenomenal, and it gets to a point in this series where this season shows that it doesn't make you feel like bipolar is a bad thing, but it feels like a thing that needs to be, treated or controlled or at least helped. And some people just aren't capable of doing it, especially if they're in a situation where you put somebody who is right. He is right. He says some things that are like, this doesn't make any sense, and he's not wrong. What they're doing, what the Byrdes are into, is nuts. But there's some things that a person like that should not know, And unfortunately, it just causes a lot of friction and a lot of problems. And what the family has to go through, he's the wild card and he's the unpredictable thing. And unfortunately, putting someone who has a mental illness in this world just can easily cause for chaos. And it does. And it's beautiful to watch. It's sort of like a Shakespearean play. It's heartbreaking. A new character also, which I was happy to see, is that there's another person of color on the show, in Maya Miller, who works for the FBI, but she does more so for like claims adjustment sort of stuff, and I'm sorry, for the IRS, and has more to do with watching the day-to-day operations of Marty's the day-to-day operations of Marty's casino. She is well aware of what the Byrdes have been doing. She knows that the FBI and the former person got in a little too close. And she also tries to offer a lifeline to Marty because she seems to genuinely care. I love that she is an African American woman and no one really points out that she is black, but it would seem like having a black woman that's just running around this Missouri casino where everybody else looks out would be a bit of an outlier, but it just goes, and I like that. I like that they just let it happen. But she is the moral compass of the show. She is moral to a core. It's her fiber. Her being is she has to do everything by the book. Fortunately, in this world where everybody else plays by a very different shade of rules, her morality becomes sort of a disservice to herself as she puts herself in some situations that, unfortunately, everybody else is playing by the cheating rules. She's playing by the straight rules. She kind of is going to get the raw end of the deal. But I love that she is. You need to have somebody in this show that does have a moral piece or a moral fiber, and I believe both her and Ben do. Unfortunately, because of different things that are going on in their life, they both have different ways to react and to respond to that. Another new character who's a little bit less of importance to the overall story, as both Ben and Maya have more to do with the Byrdes as a whole. There's Frank Cosgrove Jr. Is introduced this season. And if you don't know, Frank Cosgrove he's sort of the dock manager who dealt with the unions and the non-union people in last season. He has a son who obviously they're the mob, they're the mafia. And so the son is kind of an entitled prick. He's played by Joseph Sakara, who is known from Power fans as Tommy, which you immediately see like, oh, that's Tommy. What's he doing over here in Kansas? But he plays it well. He's a bit more of a caricature, so I don't really have much to go off of him. And he also is more of an impetus for Ruth Langmore's story than anything else, which is great. But you don't really get a lot of the meat and bones. He's there for a specific reason, so he doesn't have nearly as much of an arc as Ben or Maya does. Ben is, out of the three new characters, Ben's the one that's the best. Maya's the second, and then Frank is kind of just there to move her story along. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed about this season, which, if I can just be perfectly honest with you, Wendy Byrde was one of the most annoying characters in the first two seasons for me. She was very much like Skylar White from Breaking Bad 2.0 for me. And she was more... Nothing with Laura Linney's performance. I think she was great. I think the character was just grating to me. It was very nagging and very self-serving and detrimental to the team. A lot of it is because she immediately starts out the gate as being the person who's having the affair. So your brain is automatically like, this person is doing things incorrectly for this family dynamic. And so I went in and was like, I don't really like her. And the season starts off with me still feeling that same way because she does some things. I'm just like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? But then we get to a point when we introduce Ben, who I won't go into great deal, but they have a relationship that has been strained because of Ben's aforementioned mental illness. And so the moments of where I felt that Wendy was unhuman or very nagging or whatnot, this season does its damnedest to make me care about that woman. And it works. They make her human and give her a characterization that this is one hands down episode 9 of this show and this whole season, but episode 9 of this show, both the characters Ben and Wendy, Laura Linney and Tom Pelphrey, should be nominated for something because my God, it's emotional to watch. This season is Laura Linney's season, and Wendy Byrde goes from being somebody that I just don't like to someone that is very layered and very complicated, and now no longer comes off as the shrill Skylar 2.0, but something that is much more multifaceted. And I think that helps me care more about this family as a whole, because for a while there, it was just all I cared about was Marty and Ruth Langmore. You've now put another piece on the board that I actually have some investment into. So when or if we get a season 4, we're going to get a season 4, comes, I am curious to see where her arc goes. Because there's some sacrificing that the Byrdes have to do as a whole, that she has to do as a person, that is just fascinating to see where the character comes back from that. I kind of mentioned it before, but Ben's bipolar disorder, I don't think becomes too ham-fisted or too in your face. I think it's handled beautifully. I think it's layered. I think you definitely get the feeling sort of like Lenny from Of Mice and Men, when you know that their best interest, you know that they're putting their best foot forward and their best intentions are good, but sometimes they just get in their own way for reasons that they can't do anything about. And if anyone has ever suffered or had somebody who has suffered from bipolar disorder, I think this is a season that is going to be hard to watch, but good to watch, because I don't think they treat it as if it's a bad thing or a great thing. I think they treat it as what it is, and that's pretty real. The only other thing that I really wanted to get into was some of the old dynamics. Ruth Langmore is still phenomenal to watch. Like I can't take my eyes off of her. She reminds me of some characters that are like from Justified in that era of TV, but you're just, with all the expletives and all the foul thing that she says, there is a character in there that is phenomenal to watch, and I feel so bad for her, because I think the Byrdes do actually care for her, more so Marty than Wendy. But I think she's gotten in so deep that she can't see when they are marionetting her and doing the puppet thing with her, and when she can't. And I think this season puts her in a place where she is much more able to see the trees through the weeds, and she's able to kind of see what's what. And some of that is because of the snail, because of Darlene. Some of that is because her cousin, who she's not quite as close to anymore, is Walt Wyatt. But there's a lot going on with her, and she has a major connection with Wendy's brother, Ben, that kind of set this catalyst so that when season 4 happens, there's going to be a table set where people are going to be much more spread out and not as together as they once were. And the way that this season ends, you're just gonna say that the Byrdes are getting in way deeper than they need to, and no longer have the buffer between them and the Navarro cartel. They are now directly 1-to-1, and it's a fascinating place to be in. And I'm excited to see exactly where season 4 begins. Now, there's one thing that I won't say that I don't like, is just jarring. And you can kind of see it coming because of the way that their stories are set up. But Darlene and Wyatt and their relationship is awkward and very backwoodsy. But it fits the story, and after a while, you kind of become used to it, and people's reactions to it are genuine. I just don't know. It's hard. It is hard, but I will say that this season, from start to finish, is a fun ride, an emotional ride. Episode 9 is going to knock you on your back, punch you in the gut, and then episode 10, while it's trying to help you up, is going to sock you in the face. And you're like, well, shit, I didn't see any of that happening. It's great. If you need something to watch, if you haven't actually started Ozarks at all, you should watch them. There's only 30 episodes total. You should watch the entire season while you have time, because you guys should all be inside. But if you're not, you should be watching this instead of watching whatever the hell that tiger thing is. Guys, there's much better content of television than that. But those are my thoughts on Ozark season 3. I thought it's phenomenal. For me, it is the best season of the 3. It's kind of hard to say that when you've spent so much groundwork on the first 2 seasons building this one up. But without a doubt, for me, season 3 has been the best. And I'm excited to see where season 4 goes, because we were left on a bit of a cliffhanger. All the other seasons end with, this is the end. They've done some shady stuff, but we could technically end there if we wanted to. You cannot leave us where this left. So I do hope that they're all returning. Oh yeah, one more side story that I forgot to mention is the kids. There's a kids storyline that is happening throughout this season too. It's not as compelling as the Ben stuff, but it's sort of necessary because the kids are starting to Jonah and Charlotte and Helen's daughter are starting to react more to the Byrdes getting in deeper, and it's no longer just status quo. They're kind of like asking questions like, this stuff doesn't make sense. Specifically, Jonah is getting more angered and upset with the cavalierness of the way that things are done in this family without any ramifications of the living within them, the heart. And it's tragic to see that kids can't be kids, that they're sort of having to be adults while their parents are off gallivanting as drug cartel members. But those are my thoughts. It's going to be a little different with the films. I can't quite give you a scale of saying watch it again or all of that good stuff, because they're series. But I think if you have time, looks like we're going to be in this for the long haul for a while, self-isolating. I think Ozarks is a series that you should be giving your time to. If you like shows like The Americans or Justified or Breaking Bad, I think this is a show that kind of sits up there with those. It is a slow burn, first 2 seasons. Season 2 does not get as much love as season 1. It's just not as gripping, but season 3 is phenomenal, and you can see that we're on this escalating slow burn. I definitely think you should be checking this one out. Also, once you watch season 3, and those folks, you guys get to Fire Pink, episode 9 and episode 10. Let me know what you guys think, because, yeah. My immediately question is like, oh, that's how y'all gonna end the season? Damn it, Netflix, what are you doing, man? Come on, Jason, y'all need to be filming this. Can't be filming it now. Crap. Now I gotta wait longer because nobody can actually film anything. But those are my thoughts. Go ahead and leave your comments in the below, or you can email us at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter and leave your comments there at HollywoodADI. Usually I sign off and say, like always, I got my ticket. Going to put that on pause for a little bit because there are no tickets to give, but I just want to say everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and if you're self-isolating, or if you still have to go to work, bless you for being troopers and being essential workers. I'm sorry that you have to go through that, but hopefully sooner than later we will get through all of this. All right, thanks guys.